My name's Professor Chris Proudman from the University of Liverpool, and I'm a recognised specialist in equine gastroenterology, and I've been working in the field of parasitology in horses for many years now. And I've been providing technical and scientific support to the ScientifEQ lab for around about 10 years. Since 2010, this relationship has developed into a knowledge transfer partnership with the University of Liverpool. So I've been working with the team here, and particularly with Simon Daniels, the associate on this project, to develop the lab here at ScientifEQ and to develop the processes, train staff, and develop the interpretation of data coming from the lab. So since the lab opened in 2011, January of that year, it's been dealing with samples from intelligent worming and from veterinary practices around the UK, and now the laboratory is now in a position to take samples directly from horse owners. Unlike some other laboratories where fecal samples from horses are processed, clients can be absolutely reassured that the highest levels of scientific integrity and training are involved in processing and interpreting the samples that go through this laboratory. So you can be very sure that using the ScientifEQ lab, your horse is getting the best possible level of service and the best possible protection from parasite-associated disease.
Hello, my name's Simon and I'm the Technical Manager here at the ScientifEQ Laboratory. ScientifEQ was set up through a knowledge transfer partnership with the University of Liverpool School of Veterinary Science. This means that we have been able to use the methodology and technology from the university in this laboratory. We run to the same protocols and the same quality control measures. Now, what we're going to do in this short information video is show you how we process a fecal egg count on the dung samples that you send in for your horses. Before we can do this, we need to go outside and collect a fresh dung sample. And for that, we'll need a glove, pot, envelope and submission sheet. When collecting the dung for the sample, to send away for the sample, it's really important it's from a fresh dung pile so that the worm eggs haven't hatched out. It's also really important to make sure you get a good representation of that dung pile. There are two methods of doing this. One is to take the pot and take 5 small pieces from around the dung pile. This way, because the eggs may not be evenly distributed, you get a good representation of that poo. Try not to fill the pot over 3/4 full and pop the lid on. An alternative method would be to take the whole dung pile and pop it into a bucket. Once in the bucket, you can mix the whole pile round thoroughly so that everything is well mixed together. With this mix, take your pot, and again, 5 small pieces in different areas. Try not to overfill the pot, pop the lid on, and then it's ready to test. Once you've got your sample, make sure it's labelled with your name and your horse's name, and make sure the accompanying paperwork is also in the envelope. Seal it up, and place it back to the lab. Back in the lab, our sample's arrived. So first of all, it gets unpacked, and we check that the name on the sample matches the paperwork. We then code this to ensure that it follows around the lab. Okay? So from here, we take our sample, and we tip it out into a pot. And this is where it's really important that you've sent us a good mixed representation. We will mix it up further to make sure that it's a good representation of that overall sample. Now we weigh out 3 grams of this, and this is what we'll use for our test. So this is why it's really important that, because there's only 3 grams in there, it has to be well mixed. Now to this 3 grams, we add 42 mils of water. And once that's together, we then stir this up to make sure that all the dung is fully dissolved in the liquid. Once that's all stirred together nicely, we then sieve the solution, and this means that any fibre and undigested debris is then removed, but the worm eggs can actually fit through this really fine sieve. So make sure get as much liquid as possible, and then we collect this into 2 test tubes. Now this allows us to run the test twice so that we can get the most accurate result for you. Now once these have gone into these tubes, we then pop these into the centrifuge for 10 minutes, and this is where they're spun round so that actually we can make the sample much clearer for us to read, and again removes any more debris. Okay, so we take our sample, pop it in the centrifuge, and this will now be spun for 10 minutes. Once the sample has been spun down in the centrifuge, take it out. Now in here, there's a little pellet in the bottom where all the eggs have been spun to, and then all of this liquid at the top is waste. So we remove this liquid just to leave our eggs and pellet in the bottom if there are any eggs present. Right, now we have our pellet, we have to make sure that it's well shook up. So we use this little machine here, called a vortex, and this makes sure that the whole thing gets shook up again, so that any eggs in the bottom of the pellet are loosened up. Now after this, we take a saturated salt solution, and we fill up to 15 mils, and we do this to both of our tubes, and then we'll shake the solution up to make sure that it's all really well mixed together, so that anything that was in the bottom will then float to the top. The saturated salt makes the eggs float. They will burst if they're left in there for too long, so it's quite a quick process. So we just leave those to float up to the top. Now we use a special slide for egg counting called McMaster chamber. It has 2 chambers in it that have little grid lines, and you can count any eggs that are present within those lines. So what we do, we take a pipette and we take 1 milliliter of this solution from our test tube, and we place it in the chamber on both sides, and then we pop this under the microscope and we count up and down the different columns and count if there are any eggs present and how many there are. So far in this slide I have counted 1 egg, 2 eggs, 2 eggs in that slide, so we note that in our system, and then we repeat the process again in the second slide, and then once we have both results we can then work out the overall fecal egg count result. Once we have our second result and it's stored in our system, we check to make sure that we haven't exceeded our variance cutoff limit. If there's too big a difference between the 2 samples, we will actually run the whole test again, so that we have 4 tests on your sample, and we take the average of that, which is at no extra cost to you, but make sure that your result is as accurate as it can possibly be. Our system will work out the fecal egg count result, and we will then send this out to you on an email. We hope you found this video informative, and we look forward to receiving your horse's samples soon.